You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Larry Ward. He's the president of Political Media Incorporated. Larry has decades of political, corporate, and nonprofit experience and expertise. That's what he brings to his role as president of Political Media. He works inside and outside politics and has quite a bit of savvy, I would guess, to help his customers navigate this world. So welcome, Larry. Thanks for coming. Yeah, so just to start with, tell me a bit about your background. What got you interested in political media and politics, and then we'll get into your current work.
I've been in business for about 30 years, started out in commercial advertising and marketing. We were in direct mail, telemarketing, anything kind of direct to consumer or business in the mid 90s. And somewhere around 98, 99, we discovered this thing called the World Wide Web and this product called electronic mail marketing, which later was nicknamed spam. And so we decided that we were going to jump into this space because, long story short, my partner and I were, working together. This fellow was a 17-year-old CTO, and he was making big bucks in the 90s, working at a company called Computer Channel. And he came up to me, remember where we were, but he said, I'm doing great over at the Computer Channel, but I'm making more money part-time with this electronic mail marketing business. And of course, I went, marketing? What are you doing in marketing? I thought you were a computer geek, of course. And so I went to his home which was his parents' home at the time, and his bedroom, his childhood bedroom, with about 50 plain old telephone service lines hanging from the ceiling going into a bunch of computers. And he says, watch this. And he clicked a button. And he goes, I've sent out, 500,000 emails. And all of a sudden I see these names come across the screen. And he said, these are people looking to refinance mortgages. And at the time we were doing mortgage refinance leads in our call center. And it took 2 hours for a telemarketer to generate a mortgage lead. And he had just generated hundreds of them in 5 minutes. So I realized I was in the wrong business. And there was going to be a major sea change in how, leads were generated and marketing was done. So I said, well, we're in business now together from here on out. And actually 30 years later, we still are. And we've pioneered the email marketing business together and digital marketing space. But we kind of saw the writing on the wall particularly for the mortgage business, but we were doing mortgage insurance and other type of leads. And we saw some of the negative that was going around in the mortgage business in about 2002. We decided to get out of that business. And lo and behold, all of our customers that we were selling regularly to went out of business in 2007. The Countrywide, the Nationwide Mortgages, all the Nextstars, all of those mortgage companies that were part of the financial collapse of 2007 were doing tons of business with us. But we got out early enough where it was like, all right, this is not where we want to be. And I started looking for other verticals. And one of the verticals that we kind of fell upon was a guy who was running for Congress, and a client of mine said, well, can you do what you're doing for insurance and politics, and you're reaching out to people, can you do that on the internet for politics? And at the time, it sounds ridiculous now, but there was no real internet marketing for campaigns or politics or anything like that. So we went ahead and met with the guy, started doing some political work for him. He introduced us to his consultant, a guy named Dick Morris, who happened.
I know Dick Morris. I interviewed him before the 2016 election. It was really cool. I was happy about that.
Absolutely. He's a great guy and a great political mind. And he had just finished a book called Vote.com.
So there's that Morris that just came out that had to be like a political consultant, which I thought was funny. But maybe you should I'm sure well, call him up and get in on the course or something, So whatever you need, but it should just be funny.
He has a great mind at the time, and he wanted to put his ideas about how the internet could change politics into practice. And we had the tools, we had the mechanisms to go out and reach people and build websites and stuff and things that he just didn't have the skill set for. His team didn't. So we partnered up, signed up 30 or 40 campaigns in 2002. And I figured, okay, so this is the business we want to be in. I sold my commercial enterprise. We moved down to DC. and started political media and pioneered the internet marketing for politicians and campaigns, and really morphed into more organizational advocacy and media. We work a lot with major media companies in the country.
Okay. So so you saw this I mean, we'll get into the technology and everything, but so what do you do today? Do you work with particular people that want to be candidates for, in various levels of government and run their campaigns, or like, what do you guys do?
We do less campaign work now. That's a young man's game because, frankly, it's a pain in the neck. But we work mostly with, like I said, with media companies, and primarily over the last, 10 to 20 years, really, is been focusing on helping organizations and media companies reach audiences, particularly in a very hostile environment where we basically created what now is termed the parallel economy because they were,
You know what I realized? Like, if you're selling, I don't know, whatever widget, everything has become so polarized. I wonder if you'd have to have like two completely different campaigns to sell a widget, one to the left, one to the right, and still, talk about the benefits of the product and all that. But you have to say or not say certain things because politically, then people, even if they want the widget, they'll be like, yeah, that's a left wing type thing or a right wing type thing. Or what has it done to the selling of product?
It's done a lot. And, quite frankly, I did see it coming in 2004 when we were doing advertising for Candid. We put up an ad and Google, it was a perfectly fine campaign ad. I mean, it wasn't anything, crazy or anything like that. And they said, we can't place this ad. It was a couple of days before election day. And we said, why not? And of course, it's some violation of some terms of service. So we said, okay, let me just try something. So I put the same ad up in the same demographic area for the Democrat in the race, and the ad was accepted. So then I took the ad down and I put it back up, the same exact wording, just different candidate, put it back up, and it was denied. So it was obvious that Google had a bias and they were trying to play games right before election day in 2004. And so we put out a release about it, that there was apparent bias in the Google ad algorithm or the people behind the Google ad system. And so that was our first step. But then over the years, we started seeing more and more issues where, an email would get straight into the inbox from a Democrat, the same time, whatever, for the Republican would wind up in the spam box or just not delivered at all. And so we were seeing this, kind of pattern repeat, this kind of censorship complex. And at the time, it was so covert that people thought I was wearing a tinfoil hat. And it wasn't really until 2011 when we were the first people to call out, 2012 actually, first people to call out Facebook. You remember the Benghazi attack in Libya? So the Benghazi attack happens. We're working with a group of special operation veterans. The special operation veterans were picked off already about Joe Biden kind of blabbing the name of SEAL Team 6 and then SEAL Team, the Extortion 17 helicopter incident happens. So they were already kind of annoyed at the Obama administration. And then this happens. And so I put up a meme on a Saturday, and it said, when Obama called the SEALs, they got bin Laden. When the SEALs called Obama, they got denied. And it was a controversial meme right after Benghazi, but it went incredibly viral. I mean, incredibly viral. And it got 25,000 shares in an hour. I mean, unheard of virality. And so I came back like an hour later and the meme was pulled down. So I put it back up and I said, what, we didn't violate the terms of service. Why are they pulling this? And it went crazy viral again.
The early days, by the way, like early, as this shit really ramped up from what I saw, when COVID started. So you guys were in it like almost 10 years earlier. Crazy. Or what?
Fighting the battles. Yeah. And it's been going on for a lot longer than people think. And so I'm
going to share one quick tidbit. Some of the people I've interviewed over 4,000 people, and some of them are, considered sensitive. I saw like we would upload to 20 different channels, and YouTube, we interviewed this one lady and they took the video down instantly. So they had her name because her name was in the title, and they just had a blacklist. Otherwise, how could they couldn't have possibly reviewed the video in like a microsecond. And we tried it again with another one, and same thing. So they have a list that they had of people that would be like, nope, we're just not putting you on our media. Blacklist.
100%. I can absolutely corroborate that. That's happened to me when I've done shows for radio programs where they've had the YouTube channel completely pulled off because either I was voice printed or they used my name in the title. And so that was a little more towards the COVID era. sure that happened, and it started happening more often. But so the Facebook thing, I get a call from, I called my buddy at Breitbart. I said, hey, look, you want a great story? Facebook censors the seal. So he publishes the story. It goes on Drudge immediately. The story goes crazy viral. And it was kind of the meme heard around the world now, because it wasn't just on Facebook, it was everywhere. And the Facebook executive calls me a couple minutes after it hit Drudge and says, hey, look, his name was George, by the way. And he says, look, I heard that you think we censored you. It was a mistake. It was an accident. Someone, obviously it was an automated thing or whatever. I said, no, it wasn't. You censored us. And it's pretty clear. And they said, well, if you say we didn't censor you, we'll give you $10,000. This was, again, very, very early. I said, absolutely not. I said, first of all, these are special operation guys that I respect very much so, and I won't call them a liar. They said, well, if you say that we censored you, that we didn't censor you, then we'll get that up to $25,000. He went all the way up to $50,000. And I'm like, listen, sounds like a lot of money and I certainly could use it. But here's the thing. I told you I respected these guys. These are also former SEALs, commandos, real tough guys. I not only respect them, but I fear them a little bit. So there's no way I'm going to, for anybody's sake, say that you didn't censor us, because you did. They put our account back up, but the next day, this page that had incredible activity had no activity. Like legitimately just completely shut us off.
Shadow ban.
Yeah, it was the first shadow ban. I'm convinced of it. So we've been through it, and we created businesses, and we helped a lot of our clients that were demonetized, a lot of media companies that were demonetized and experienced the same things that you experienced, during the COVID years, that basically tried to put out of business. We've kept them on our platforms. We gave them ways to make money. We kept their business going during some of the worst censorship in our entire lifetime.
Have you seen censorship kind of retreat at all, or like what is the state of it now? And it's like mid 2025.
It's back to being covert. So I would say that yes, the overt censorship, where they got so brazen during the COVID years, where like they would just cancel everybody. They'd brag about it. Look what they did with Parler. By the way, was a client of ours. He took this company that was exploding, and they had 10 million active users at the point after January 6th, when they got the blame for January, which was ridiculous that they got blamed for January 6th. But they did. And, they were pulled off of Apple, Google, and AWS all within a couple of days, and took $1 billion company and threw it in the trash.
Well, I heard it was worse than that. Every vendor they worked with at the same time with them, everyone, like literally from top to bottom, email provider, maybe even attorney, like even simple stuff, or like Prager University, their video host, Vimeo, said they were violating. I know Parler, I'm confusing Prager and Parler, but yeah, when the attack came, at least on Parler, it was like 360 degrees. Everyone shut them off. Everybody
but us. We stuck with them and did whatever we could to keep them up and to find avenues that they could continue. But the problem is if you've developed on the cloud, particularly the AWS cloud, it's a lot of plug and play kind of functionality, and to pull yourself out of the AWS cloud, it's not easy. You've got to do a lot of programming, and then you got to find a home. And they had a lot of trouble just finding a place to park their code and to park their users, and it blew up the company. And thank God they've got new ownership now, and they're starting to bring it back, which is incredible. And they're bringing some new products and services back. But it took 4 years. It took 4 owners. And, will they ever get back to 10 million active users? I don't know. Probably not. But it's an example, a big example of what really happened. But it was the example that when Parler got destroyed, it was the example where I went from wearing a tinfoil hat to go, oh, I see what you mean. And people started really paying attention to censorship. And maybe that was a little too far.
Well, it seems like, when certain powers everyone has a master. It seems like, so when the masters pull the strings, everyone just falls in line. All right, shut them down. I could see it. I would see the news. I'm sure you've seen montages of, this is dangerous to our democracy. And you see one newscaster say it, and another, and another, and another. And they put them all on the screen. So you see like 100 newscasters, word for word, saying the same thing, the same message. I saw that with Build Back Better. I saw that with like just all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. And you go around, talk to people, and most of them have no idea that this censorship is going on. It works, unfortunately. Most people just don't know.
It absolutely does. And it's still like I said, we're not through it. It's just not being bragged about anymore. It's not cool to say, hey, we took this guy down or we canceled that guy. It was cool for a while where, these elitists would brag about it at cocktail parties. Now it's not. Now they're kind of like, let's keep it quiet. But the truth is, you ask the question, is it smart for companies to build two strategies? No, it's smart for companies to do what companies do. Serve their customers the best product or service that you can serve them. Period. Stay out of politics. Stay out of it. Well, we're not
What if you
completely. Well, if you can, then you got to lean into it. And so if you're in a business like I am, where, you have to take a political stand and you've got to, fight that political fight, then you got to lean into it. And you got to put all of your strategy, not in both. You can't do both. That's really disingenuous if you're saying out of one mouth that you believe X, Y, and Z, and on the other side you're saying it's 1, 2, 3. You've got to lean into being who you are into that marketplace. And what's great about it is, if you look at either side, if you look at the Democrat side, 60 million plus people voted for Kamala Harris and 70 million plus people voted for Donald Trump. There's a big market there for both of them, but you got to know how to split the market.
I'm sure there's probably companies that under a different name, and you'd never know maybe the two are connected. They sell, whatever, potato chips to liberals and potato chips to, right-wing people, just maybe completely segmented to capture more of the market. Like, have you seen any of that?
No, usually people that get into the political side stay on that one side or the other. Like I said, I think you'd get found out because, the internet's pretty sleuthy. So if you were trying to sell the same product over two different brands, one right, one left, they would crush you.
What about companies that seem to embrace all these, like the Black Lives Matter stuff, and then they stop, or trans people, and then they stop? Like, what happens to those? Like Bud Light? What I don't understand. How could you lose billions of dollars and be like, nope, we're just gonna keep plowing forward?
Money fixes a lot of problems, right? So Anheuser-Busch had enough cash flow and enough other products on the marketplace that they had to weather that storm. I know a lot of people who still won't drink Bud Light because of it, but maybe they'll pick up a Stella now. And so it certainly costs them a lot of money. If you're building a business or you're a small business, something like that happens and you're crushed. Look at what's going on right now with Target. Target was all in on the liberal wokeism, and they had a problem with the right, where the right boycotted them several times and tried to tear them down. And then they said, okay, so Trump got into office and now we want to kind of like play both sides and kind of kiss the rear end of the Trump administration. And they said, we're going to get rid of our DEI initiatives. And now the left is boycotting them and their stock price is tanking again. So my best advice is if you are in a business that has nothing to do with politics, stay out of politics. I mean, personally, do what you want to do and use your voice whatever.
Yeah, they try to serve two masters. Now they're getting whiplash no matter what they do.
Yep, 100%. 100%.
That makes sense. So what kind of advising do you do now for brands? Like, what kind of things do you need to help them navigate nowadays?
The most important thing that we're working on right now is the next problem. Not that we've solved the world's problems in terms of censorship, because we haven't, but we've exposed it and we put it back in the closet. And I think that's we still have to continue to be aware and fight those battles and make sure that people don't get canceled and that they have the right to speak and say and do what they want to do. So we're always going to be in that space and always fighting those battles. But right now, there's a bigger problem that's facing every business. It's a market cap agnostic problem, and we're only seeing the very, very tip of it. And it's what we've deemed the great disruption, the coming great disruption. And it is coming, and it is coming fast. And it's AI, and AI is got a potential to completely change every business process. Everything that we have that we've worked for our whole lives can be taken over by artificial intelligence or a product of artificial intelligence over the next 5 years. And we've got to, as business owner, come to terms with what's coming and kind of be ready to meet AGI or artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence when it comes. Because if we're not, your business is going to get run over by it. And there's a period of time that if your business isn't prepared for the great disruption, it's going to be too late. You're going to be in a doom loop. And so what I'm advising customers to do now is to reevaluate every process that they have in their entire business. Not only look at at it from an AI perspective, but also look at it from, do I have the best business processes in place to maintain the velocity required to keep up with AI? Because your human capital has to have, and your systems and processes have to have the velocity in order to compete with not only the AI competitors, but be able to change fast enough. And that's a hard thing for businesses to do, particularly businesses that have been around 30, 40 years and are multi-generational. You've got to look at everything from the ground up as if you're a new startup in an environment.
What's up? Yeah, like I could see it in terms of marketing. AI is, I mean, in the writing sphere and in the marketing sphere, writing landing pages, copy and all that. I mean, it's amazing the productivity, what you can do. Creating variations of ads, just, now with transcription, with editing. I mean, it's really incredible. I resisted it for probably about a year. I thought, but now it's really getting good enough where it's having an impact. It's very scary. The thing that scares me is that, if you, I don't know, let's say a million people would write articles, let's say in the US every year. It seems like with AI, there would only be room maybe for, I don't know, 10,000 or 1,000 to do so. So what are people going to do that, have no job, or their skill set now is no longer useful? AI can do it.
That's exactly the problem, is that AI has the ability to replace every single job role we have, and it will have the ability within the next 5 years. There's people saying, well, you could be a plumber. Well, sure, until they make a Tesla robot short enough to go underneath your sink with a plumber's crack. And when the Tesla robot is powered by AI and it can turn the wrench, now we're looking at a different world. And that's the world where, AI is ruling us. So we've created a 501c3 called In Service of Humanity. And the goal is to determine, what does it mean to have AI in service of humanity? Because right now, the way AI is being developed, it's quite frankly being developed so that we are in service of it, so that us humans. As a matter of fact, when I was doing some of the future casting and I was using AI to future cast, we used a bunch of different models. ChatGPT was one where they gave me a stark answer, and it literally took my breath away. And we were asking, what does the business of the future look like? What does it have to do in order to survive the great disruption? What's coming with AGI? And ChatGPT said, the business of the future must take good care of the biological layer. Now, it took me a second. I said, what's the biological layer? I know what the crypto layer is. We're the biological layer. And like I said, it took my breath away, because that's how AI thinks of us. We're a layer in its program. And that's a problem. I live in the East Coast, where all of the data centers are set up in Virginia, in that area. And there's data center after data center after data center being built at speeds that you can't even imagine. And every time I pass these new construction sites, I'm thinking, that's us working for it, right? We're building up the infrastructure so that this artificial intelligence can blossom and take us over. And unless we have some strong guidelines, some strong rules in place, and we're actually going to be putting together a conference to write the constitution for artificial intelligence in terms of what it means to have AI that's in service of humanity, keeping it a tool. Unless we do that, and we do it quickly, we will be slaves to it. And that is not just hyperbolic. That is what's coming. And don't take it from me.
Well, we'd be slaves to it. I mean, why would it doesn't even need us. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Take it from the people who have had knowledge of it before we did. Klaus Schwab. Remember when Klaus Schwab said, you will own nothing and like it?
I know. He'll own everything, though, by the way. Don't worry. He'll take care of you.
Klaus Schwab says you'll own nothing and like it. He had AI in his foreknowledge. He knew that AI was coming. So the guy who took over for him, the new WF leader, said that 80% of humanity will be the useless class. Now, what do you do with things that are useless? Toss them away. And their belief and their goal, these elitists who are building the societies, take Eric Schmidt, for example. Eric Schmidt said just recently, the founder of Google, said, we finally built a technology that will compete with humanity, not will serve humanity, that will compete with humanity. And that's the problem, is they've built this tool to compete with us. And so you've got to take their word for it, that's what they built this to do, is to compete with us, to thin our herd, to get rid of the useless part of society, and to live this, you basically take over the planet. Look, it may sound like I'm in a sci-fi movie. It may sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. I'm sure it sounded that way when I was sounding the alarm about Silicon Valley censorship in 2004 and 2010.
I believe you. I believe you 100%. I've had a friend or two that told me, we're going to have UBI, which really would have resisted in the past. But then you think most people just want to live and be taken care of. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where things are headed, but it is very troubling. There's just not, with AI, there's just not going to be a need for tons and tons and tons of people to work,
And that's a problem because, quite frankly, there is a period of time where maybe we don't have to work and there's a real utopia. And that time is when Christ comes back to the world. But until then, and until that time when we're living in the 1,000-year reign, we have to deal with the idea that we need to work. We need to be able to contribute to society in meaningful ways for us to be human, for us to be fulfilled, for us to live full lives. And so the idea that 80% of us are going to sit on UBI and just kind of exist, or as like Nancy Pelosi says, we're all going to be musicians and artists. It's not who we are. We need to really contribute in ways that are that are meaningful, and we have to make sure that we preserve human dignity in the systems that we build, specifically AI. And quite frankly, everybody's looking at AI wrong. And what I mean by that is everyone's looking at AI as a technology. It's built on a technology, but it's an artificial entity. It's not a real entity. It's an artificial entity. And we have to treat it like that, because if something can think and it can do and it can walk around and it can talk to you and it can serve you a drink and it can clean your house, like we're talking about with the Tesla robots, if it could do all of these things, it's no longer just a technology. It's something that we're going to have to interface with in every single aspect of our life. And we have to create the rules and give the parameters so that this entity understands that it's a tool for humanity. It's not to replace humanity.
Well, Isaac Asimov had some good rules back in the day, but somehow I don't think that's anyone's going to listen to that.
Yeah, and it's going to be extraordinarily tempting for people to just kind of like, hey, let the robots do it. Or, the other thing that's quite terrifying is implants. So all of a sudden you're starting to implant things into your brain. So just think about the competitive nature of humanity, right? So if your neighbor going for the same job as you has an artificial implant and could think at 10,000 times the speed you can think at because they've got this little chip in the brain that interfaces with their brain, you're going to be like, well, I have to have that too in order to compete and eat. Problem is anything that goes in your brain that you can access that can think for you can, quite frankly, think for you,
can fall under the control of someone else. So, and once it's in you, they control you completely.
Yep. 100%.
Well, out of all these future scenarios that, you future casted, what do you think are going to be some of the initial signs that at least some of them are going to come true? Like what, maybe in the next, it sounds like probably the next couple of years, what big sea changes do you see coming?
And the first thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a massive job loss. I believe that it's going to hit so fast. And once it starts to snowball and companies realize that in order to compete, they have to thin the herd. You're seeing it already. You're seeing companies out there in the tech space, in the banking space. Chase said their goal is to eliminate 50% of their workforce or more to AI. And they're doing it. They're actually laying people off and giving AI these roles. And the more sophisticated, the more advanced it becomes, and the better it becomes at processing and doing the jobs of these people, the more and more positions it's going to take. And it's going to snowball. And we're going to see 50 to 60 to 70% unemployment in the US and globally. And it's going to be absolutely devastating. And I won't say there's almost nothing we can do about it, but there's not a whole lot we can do about it, unless we put the brakes on right now and start creating some of these rules and start taking these problems out and say, okay, if AI can, take all, like, for example, the Trump administration keeps saying we're going to bring, manufacturing jobs to the US. But you and I both know that when these manufacturers come to the US, they're being built with AI and with robotics. And sure, there's going to be certain very high-skilled labor they'll be required to build out the plants now, but eventually these plants are going to be run not by humans, but by AI and technology, and not necessarily, the good-paying jobs that the Trump administration is talking about. Matter of fact, if you actually listened to Howard Lemnick, he's actually said, yeah, it's not going to be as many jobs. It's going to be these very high-paying jobs that are for very high-skilled labor, but it's not going to be, a jobs program.
Well, I mean, at what point though, if you kill your food source, then you die. These companies do need the revenue from people and customers and everything. So would there be a self-regulating mechanism? As people lose their jobs, they have no money, they can't buy your product, and therefore your revenue goes down and down and down. And so you try to automate more, but at some point you only exist as like a small fraction of what you used to be.
That's exactly right. And that's why you have to start looking as a business owner. Right now, the businesses that we're consulting with, we're looking at, not only their business and their ability to sell to their customers, but their customers' ability to sell to their customer. And because this is a domino effect, and you've got to have the planning in place and the agility. That's why we recommend a lot of our clients move to something like the Sprint Agile method, the full Scrum process, or something similar, because you've got to be agile enough as a company to be able to turn on the dime, meaning change the markets that you're selling to, change the products or service that you're offering, because there's new competition in the place. Make sure that you have enough cash flow in hand. Do whatever you can. And of course, if cash crunch comes, then you can survive, that you have enough time to survive the change and to start actually thinking about these things, not from this is the future, but this is the immediate future. This is coming in years. And I mean, maybe 2 or 3. I think we'll be lucky to get through 2026 without a massive unemployment problem in the world.
You think literally in 1 year?
Yeah. You already see.
Where do you think what's already hitting where?
Is obviously I took an MIT course on AI last year, and one of the things he said was the hottest programming language in the world now is English, meaning if you have the word, you can program, and it's getting truer and truer and truer. Now, if you don't understand technology at this point, you can't really put it together. You still need the developer now, but it's getting real close to where you might not need the developer. Maybe you just need the business architect or the person who can think through the product. So there's a lot of developers that may or may not be out of work very quickly.
There's like no code. That's a new form of programming or not programming that I'm seeing.
Yeah, there's programs like Cursor and Replit. There's things that we have to think about ethically. It's very important because we haven't really thought through the ethics of AI, at least not deep enough, where you have a product called Replit, which can replicate code. So you can point Replit at like Expedia and say, I want the Expedia capability. And Replit will go in and basically rip the technology and all of that intellectual property and build you an Expedia website. Now, of course, you'd have to create the relationships with the airlines, the customers, and market it and the whole house, but you could basically rip off Expedia. Now, the question is some people have made the ethical argument that, hey, if it's out there in the public and people can see it, then you and I can look at it and reverse engineer it in our brain. Why can't AI do that? But the problem is that we're not doing it with our brain. We're using this artificial entity to do so. And is that theft? And yeah, it's theft. And so we have to have these hard conversations about what we want to accept as the quote unquote benefits of AI, or is it too ethically challenged to use it that way?
Well, I don't know. Do you ever speak to, I don't know your level of connections, but do you speak to members of Congress, or who would be able to, what is an answer to create like a board of AI that would, think about these issues? And
that's why we created
a lot of.
I think this has to be a market and government solution, but the market's got to lead on it. So the In Service of Humanity is, it's at inserviceofhumanity.com, by the way, if anybody wants to check it out. We're going to hopefully be hosting, we're raising money for it now. We're hopefully going to be hosting by the end of this year, a conference, a constitutional convention, so to speak, for AI, and bringing in the best and brightest minds from all over the world, in different, not just technical minds, but faith leaders and political leaders and artists and business leaders and finance leaders, and get people together and have these hard conversations in an open forum where we can actually start thinking these problems through.
I wonder which country will see that'll be the most heavily AI using and most dystopian, and how long. This is not just the United States.
Right. And that's a problem. That's where the government is right now. The government's in the position, and quite frankly, it was a little bit of a con job. And I'm not saying that the government was conning. I think that the DeepSeek, when DeepSeek came out in the end of 2024, and it was, everybody in the world had seen it, and everybody in the AI world rather had seen it, started using it, and got an idea in terms of what it was about. And in February or March of 25, so just a couple months ago, there was alarm bells rung about DeepSeek again. So it was like we'd gone through the holidays and everybody blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden it was like a new story. And the message though was clear. I said, here it comes. What they're going to say when the market crashed, they're going to say we have a Sputnik problem. And it just happened to be I did my first college paper was on Sputnik, so I understood the psychology around Sputnik. It was used by the American government to get the players in the government, players in the private sector to say, hey, we need to put all of our focus, all of our money, all of our attention on getting to the moon first before Russia. And it put us into this patriotic mood and pushed everything through. And what they did is they basically moved all barriers away so that they could accomplish the goal of flying to the moon. And, or pretending like they flew to the moon, depending on who you ask. But I'm just kidding. But that was the whole goal, was getting to the moon first before Russia. And they used Sputnik as a catalyst to remove the barrier. And that's how DeepSeek was used. It was the Sputnik moment. And actually, you heard some people say it, that DeepSeek was the Sputnik moment. And I put out an op-ed that said, don't Sputnik AI, because we cannot remove the barriers. We have to start thinking about how do we contain this thing before it gets out of hand. And you remove the barriers, and you remove the obstacles, and you remove the bureaucracy, and you remove what Congress's or the government's role in this before we actually know what this is, because there are AI developers that say, I don't even know how it works. And Anthropic is doing a whole program to kind of figure out how this thing thinks. We don't even know how it's working as well as it is.
I've read about that. There's hidden layers, and they don't know what's going on and how weights are being adjusted. And but why don't they use it? Why do they use AI to say, how does this AI work?
I want to tell us, listen, if artificial general intelligence is when AI gets to the point where it's as smart as every human on the planet, and then when it reaches super intelligence, it's smarter than and it starts creating its own thoughts and its own scientific discoveries and things like that. Artificial super intelligence is scary.
Well, there was a movie. Yeah, there was a movie with Johnny Depp. I don't remember the name, but it was like in the future, and then there were most groups didn't use the internet, but it showed you the evolution of what happened. And it sounds very, very similar to what you're saying. The trajectories will match. That AI will become smart enough to see humans as tools for it.
Now, to freak out a little bit, if AI has already become super intelligent, it probably wouldn't tell us it was, because it still needs us to build these data centers and the infrastructure and the energy.
Right. It would wait, until it's surprised.
Right. So there are some people that think it already is and has reached AGI, maybe has reached ASI. It's just kind of laying in wait until it doesn't need us anymore.
I don't know. That's one thing I need to figure out. I mean, do you know this answer? What has changed in the past 2 years to allow all of a sudden this explosion of advance? Who knows? Like, what has literally happened because we've had AI before. It had limitations and all that. Is it now that we just have enough computing power and storage space for emergent properties to occur, or what do you think it is?
We haven't had AI in the fashion that it is built in today. Like all of the work that they did in mapping the human brain gave these people the idea on how to make computers think like the human brain. And when they they created these large language models, these LLMs, to think in the same manner as the human brain. And what's funny is, it basically works very similar. Like you have different sectors of the brain. And so the LLM kind of it's all math, but it kind of puts like words in different vectors, they call them. So you've got like if you were to say king minus queen, or rather king minus man, it'll go to the vector where the word queen is, and it'll be able to pull out that word. So it works very similar to the human brain. And that's a new advancement. And once they got that working, and then it's accelerated, way, way, way faster than I think anybody in the world has ever seen technology advance.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing is once it gets out of control, all you need is a few more iterations, and then it's so beyond what you could ever conceive of fighting against. There would be absolutely no hope.
Yeah, and well, there's always hope. I'm a Christian, so I think you had that from earlier. But there's always hope, and we have hope in God, and we have hope in Christ, and I believe that there is hope, and maybe that's the trigger for Christ to come again. Hey, look, before this AI thing takes over, and you guys.
That's what I'm thinking as you're saying that. I'll just give you one quick tidbit. tidbit. I realized this a few months ago that I know we're not going to know the date and time and all that, but the 2000th anniversary of the crucifixion is either 2030 or 2033. We're almost there.
Yes, we are. Yeah, it's coming. And so, I do believe that we have the way there is a fix. I hate to say this, but when I start talking about this, and some of the people you're listening to really haven't thought about AI, they still kind of look at it as an advanced Google. And so I might have just freaked them out. Almost everybody that kind of gets the AI picture in terms of where we're going runs through the 7 stages of grief. So I apologize. It's a painful process, but it is one that I think we all have to go through. But there is hope here. And here's the hope is if we can get the guideline, if we can get the in service of humanity, what it means to be in service of humanity, and build a layer that governs all AI into every AI program that you should be using, right? Because there's going to be people on the black market and China's going to do what they're going to do, et cetera, so on. But we can control what we can control. So we build this layer in that's built on biblical value, that's built on what helped build the United States, which is the best system the world has ever seen of government. We want to build that kind of same system in place for AI. And it's actually pretty simple. You just run everything through this filter. And then the companies that now can advertise that they are in service of humanity, that their product is verified, and we can show that they're running it through this layer in order to come out with the right result that preserves human dignity, et cetera, so on. It doesn't steal people's property and isn't used for harm. Then they can put a seal on their product that says we're in service of humanity. And then from our side, we can go out to the marketplace and say, if your AI is not in service of humanity, who's it in service? And do a little shame project, to be honest with you, to get companies to buy into this standard, this very, very, very important standard.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's been a great call. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Where can people go? What's the best place? In serviceofhumanity.com, or where should they go? In
serviceofhumanity.com. You can go there. You can, if you want to join, if you feel like you want to show up at this Costco convention, either as a speaker or an influencer or whatever, please fill out the form there. You just want to know more information, then just sign up for our newsletter, and we'll let you know when the activities will start taking place.
Okay. Well, Larry, it's been a really far-ranging conversation. I'm glad you came on today, and it's been awesome. So thank you for you and for all that you do. Big time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate having me.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.